The security guard at Fort Carson's main gate looks up from his clipboard as an old man in a worn leather jacket approaches the checkpoint. The man walks with a slight limp, his gray hair neat but not military regulation short. He carries no bags, just a folded piece of paper in his weathered hands. "Good morning, sir. Do you have business on base today?" The old man stops at the window and unfolds the paper. It's a funeral notice with military honors listed at the bottom. "I'm here for Sergeant Major Williams' service. It starts in an hour." Before continuing the story, let us know in the comments, what city are you watching this story from? The guard specialist Rodriguez takes the paper and scans it quickly. Standard procedure for civilian visitors attending military funerals. But when he looks up to ask for identification, something about the old man's bearing makes him pause. The visitor stands perfectly straight despite his age. His eyes scan the base entrance with the automatic awareness of someone who's spent time in dangerous places. There's something familiar about the way he holds himself. "I'll need to see some ID, sir." The old man reaches into his jacket and pulls out a worn military ID card. Rodriguez takes it and reads the name, Colonel James Mitchell, U.S. Army, retired. The specialist's eyes widen. He looks at the ID card again, then at the man standing before him. "Sir, are you the Colonel Mitchell?" "I'm Colonel Mitchell." "Not sure what you mean by the Colonel Mitchell." Rodriguez calls over to his partner, Sergeant Davis, who's been processing a delivery truck. "Sarge, you need to see this." Davis walks over, takes one look at the ID card, and freezes. His face goes pale. "Holy shit," he whispers, then catches himself. "Sorry, sir. I mean, Colonel Mitchell, from the Battle of Firebase Echo?" The old man's expression doesn't change. "That was a long time ago." Sergeant Davis stares at him like he's seeing a ghost. "Sir, they teach about that battle in advanced infantry school. You held that position for 3 days with 30 men against 500 enemy fighters." "32 men," Colonel Mitchell corrects quietly. "And we lost 8 of them." The two guards exchange glances. Every soldier at Fort Carson knows the story of Firebase Echo, but none of them ever expected to meet the man who led that defense. Rodriguez hands back the ID card with shaking hands. "Sir, you don't need a visitor pass. You have permanent base access. It's in your file." "I haven't been on a military base in 30 years. I assumed things had changed." "Some things don't change, sir." Colonel Mitchell takes back his ID and starts to walk through the gate, but Sergeant Davis stops him. "Sir, would you mind if I called the base commander? Colonel Harrison would want to know you're here." "That's not necessary. I'm just here for the funeral." "Sir, with respect, Sergeant Major Williams was your radio operator at Firebase Echo. The base commander will want to pay his respects to both of you." Mitchell stops walking. For the first time, his controlled expression softens slightly. "How do you know that?" "It's in the official history, sir. Sergeant Major Williams stayed at your side for all 3 days of the battle, coordinating air support and calling in medical evacuations under constant fire." Mitchell nods slowly. "Billy was a good soldier. Best radio operator I ever worked with. He never stopped talking about serving under you, sir. Said it was the honor of his career." 30 years ago, Colonel James Mitchell walked away from the Army after 22 years of service. He'd had enough of war, enough of sending young soldiers into harm's way, enough of making life and death decisions in situations where there were no good choices. The Battle of Firebase Echo had been his last command. For 72 hours, his small unit held a strategic hilltop position against overwhelming enemy forces. They called in airstrikes, coordinated artillery support, and fought hand-to-hand when the enemy broke through their perimeter. When reinforcements finally arrived, Mitchell's unit had suffered 8 casualties, but had prevented enemy forces from overrunning a major supply route. The battle became a textbook example of small unit leadership under extreme pressure. Mitchell received the Distinguished Service Cross and a promotion to full colonel. Instead of accepting the promotion, he submitted his retirement papers. He'd saved 32 men at Firebase Echo, but he'd lost 8 others. In his mind, the math didn't balance. For 3 decades, Mitchell worked as a high school history teacher in a small town outside Denver. He never talked about his military service, never attended veterans reunions, Never responded to interview requests from military historians. The only person from his Army days he stayed in touch with was Billy Williams, his former radio operator who'd made the Army his career and risen to sergeant major. When Billy was diagnosed with cancer 6 months ago, he'd called Mitchell every week, not to talk about the war, but to catch up on normal things: family, work, baseball scores, the weather. Last Tuesday, Billy's wife called to tell Mitchell that her husband had died peacefully in his sleep. The funeral would be at Fort Carson with full military honors. Mitchell hadn't set foot on a military base since his retirement ceremony in 1994. But Billy Williams deserved his respect, and Mitchell would be there to pay it. Sergeant Davis gets on his radio while Mitchell waits at the gate. "Base Command, this is Gate 1. Colonel James Mitchell is here for the Williams funeral." "Yes, sir, that Colonel Mitchell." A pause. "Roger that. He'll be here when you arrive." Davis turns back to Mitchell. "Sir, Colonel Harrison is on his way. He'll be here in 5 minutes." "I told you that wasn't necessary." "Sir, you're a legend at this base. There's a plaque with your name on it in the command building. A training area is named after Firebase Echo. Every officer here knows your story." Mitchell looks uncomfortable with the attention. "I was just doing my job." "Sir, if you don't mind me asking, why did you retire so young? You could have made general." Mitchell is quiet for a moment. "I'd done enough. Other people needed to carry the load." A black sedan pulls up to the gate with base commander flags on the front bumper. Colonel Harrison steps out, a tall man in his 40s with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He approaches Mitchell and salutes. Mitchell returns the salute automatically, muscle memory from decades past. "Colonel Mitchell, it's an honor to meet you, sir. I'm Colonel Harrison, base commander." "Colonel?" "Sir, I know you're here for Sergeant Major Williams' service, but I'd like to invite you to speak at the ceremony. Billy talked about you constantly. He'd want you to say something." Mitchell shakes his head. "I'm not good at speeches anymore." "Sir, you don't need to be good at speeches. You just need to be yourself. These soldiers deserve to hear from the man who led Firebase Echo. That was 30 years ago. The lessons you taught there are still saving lives today, sir. We teach your tactics in our advanced courses. Your decision-making under pressure is required study for all company commanders." Mitchell looks through the gate at the base beyond. Soldiers walking between buildings, vehicles moving along tree-lined roads, the American flag flying above the headquarters building. It looks the same as he remembers, but different. Newer buildings, better equipment, younger faces. But the same sense of purpose, the same commitment to something larger than individual ambition. What would I say? Tell them about Billy Williams. Tell them what kind of soldier he was, what kind of man he was. Help them understand why his service mattered. Mitchell considers this. He came here to honor Billy, not to relive his own past. But maybe talking about Billy is exactly what he should do. "All right, I'll speak." Colonel Harrison smiles. "Thank you, sir. It means everything to have you here." "Where is the service?" "The base chapel, sir. But first, would you mind if I showed you something?" Harrison leads Mitchell through the gate and toward a small memorial garden near the base entrance. In the center stands a black granite monument listing the names of soldiers who died defending Firebase Echo. 8 names are engraved on the stone, including PFC Robert Chen and SGT Michael Torres, young soldiers Mitchell remembers clearly. At the bottom of the monument, a bronze plaque reads, "Their sacrifice was not in vain. Their courage will not be forgotten. Firebase Echo, October 1993. Mitchell stands quietly before the memorial, reading each name. These are the men he's thought about every day for 30 years. The ones who didn't come home because of decisions he made in the heat of battle. "Sir," Colonel Harrison says quietly, "their families want you to know they don't blame you for what happened. They're grateful their sons served under someone who cared enough to remember them." Mitchell touches the memorial stone. His hand traces the engraved names of soldiers who died under his command. "They were good kids, all of them." "Yes, sir. And because of your leadership, 24 other good kids came home to their families." For the first time in 30 years, Mitchell allows himself to believe that might be true. The funeral service is held in the base chapel, packed with active duty soldiers, retirees, and Billy Williams' extended family. Mitchell sits in the front row next to Billy's widow, who holds his hand during the opening prayers. When Colonel Harrison introduces him, Mitchell walks to the podium and looks out at the assembled crowd. For a moment, he's not sure what to say. Then he begins. Sergeant Major Williams was the best soldier I ever served with, not because he was the strongest or the fastest, but because he never quit on the people depending on him. Mitchell talks about Billy's courage under fire, his loyalty to his fellow soldiers, and his dedication to mission success. He tells stories that make people laugh and remember why they chose military service. Billy Williams understood something that every soldier needs to understand. We don't serve for glory or recognition. We serve for each other. For the person standing next to us who's counting on us to do our job. When he finishes speaking, the chapel is silent except for the sound of people quietly crying. Mitchell returns to his seat as the honor guard prepares for the final military honors. After the service, dozens of soldiers approach Mitchell to shake his hand and thank him for his words. Young officers tell him they've studied his tactics. Sergeants say his leadership principles are still taught in professional development courses. Colonel Harrison walks with Mitchell back toward the base entrance. "Sir, I hope you'll consider visiting us again. Maybe speak to our officer training classes. Share some of your experience." Mitchell stops walking and looks back at the base he once called home. "You know what? I think I'd like that." "Really?" "Billy always said the Army was his family. Maybe it's time I came home." That evening, Mitchell drives back to his small town with a sense of peace he hasn't felt in 30 years. He'd spent 3 decades running from his military past, convinced that his failures outweighed his successes. But seeing that memorial, meeting those young soldiers, honoring Billy Williams' memory, it helped him understand something important. The measure of a leader isn't whether everyone comes home safe. The measure of a leader is whether the people who do come home are better for having served under you. Billy Williams lived 68 years and touched hundreds of lives because Colonel Mitchell made the right decisions under impossible circumstances. That has to count for something. 2 weeks later, Mitchell receives a letter from Fort Carson, inviting him to serve as a visiting instructor for their advanced leadership courses. He accepts immediately. Some soldiers retire from the Army. Others just take a long break before coming home.